Please be seated. Oh, thank you. All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I apologize that we're starting a little bit late. I do want to introduce the members that we have here of the dais. I am Stephen Rhodes, the chair of the Minority Affairs Committee. I have my vice chair, Rose Walker, Legislator Rose Walker. I have the ranking member, Carrie Salage. We also have Sila Baino, who is sitting in for Minority Leader Kavan Abrahams. We have Legislator Deborah Muley. And we also have joining us, even though she's not a member of the committee, we have Legislator Ellen Birnbaum. The purpose of today's hearing, obviously, is multifaceted. As part of our oversight responsibilities, we want to make sure that we hear from Minority Affairs to make sure that they're performing their functions correctly. The charter mandates that the Office of Minority Affairs assist various officers of county government in improving the delivery of quality of life services such as social services, mental health, health services, public works projects involving the minority community and public safety, provides the county executive and the county legislature with minority community impact assessments on budgetary actions and policies, provides access and opportunity for minority participation in county contract and procurement programs, develops and improves the county women and minority enterprise programs to afford greater opportunities to participate in public contract bidding procedures, as well as exploring ways and means to assure their participation, produce and publish any research papers or studies on the issues affecting the minority community, provide assistance in the implementation of affirmative action programs in county government, employment, housing, and the development of an annual affirmative action report required by the county for certain of its state and federal funding sources on employment opportunities for minorities in its workforce, and to administer the county's affirmative action program. As part of our oversight responsibilities, obviously, we want to receive periodic updates from the Office of Minority Affairs and from the administration as to how we're doing. And that's the purpose of today's hearing. We anticipate that we're going to cover, we'll receive a presentation from the administration, and I do want to introduce, though I see 5 people at the table and I only have 4 names, so I do at least want to take a moment to introduce some of the members of the administration that we have here. We have Deputy County Attorney for Compliance, John Chiara. We have Kyle Rose Louder, our Deputy County Executive. Did I say Deputy County Attorney? Mm-hmm. Sorry. Deputy County Executive for Compliance. We have Kyle Rose Louder, our Deputy County Executive for Health and Human Services. We have Evelyn Sinis.
That's it.
Deputy County, did I get it right?
Yep.
Deputy County Executive for Economic Development. We have Farah Mazwala, who is now will be shortly, hopefully, the Executive Director of our newly created Asian American Council. And we have one other, Regina Williams, who is the Acting Director of the Office of Minority Affairs. I anticipate that we're going to be covering, after the presentation, we're really going to be covering the topics of minority and women-owned businesses, Title 53, participation by minority group members and women in Nassau County contracts, our disparity study, as well as the topic of our Executive Director in the Office of Minority Affairs. Now, we have indicated that, that today's hearing will conclude at 6 o'clock relatively promptly, and I apologize even more for us having to delay the beginning of this. I do want to let everyone know at the start that the topics that we're covering today are incredibly important. And if it is the situation that we don't hear, we don't fully vet all issues, that we don't hear from the public, or that legislators have additional questions or additional topics that need to be explored further, we will hold the hearing in recess and we will reconvene at another time to make sure that all issues and all voices are heard. Nassau County prides itself on the fact that we are a diverse community. And we want Nassau County government, and we want our contracting and procurement processes to reflect the diversity that we all celebrate. It makes us stronger. And the Office of Minority Affairs is our key to making sure that that happens. Again, we're here today to make sure that the office is functioning properly, to get our report. The committee itself has held off on having a hearing to make sure that the administration had time to, at the start of a new administration, to get its legs under it. We're now 16 months in, so we think that it is well past time for this hearing to take place. At this point in time, I want to recognize Ranking Member Carrier Szilagyi for the purpose of making an opening statement on behalf of the minority. Legislator?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Legislator Rhodes, Chairperson of the Minority Affairs Committee, Deputy County Executive Simis, legislative colleagues, residents, and guests. I'm Carrier Szilagyi, legislator of the 3rd District. The cultural and economic diversity of my district gives me a distinct perspective on the needs of the community that I serve. By holding this meeting in this forum, the first of its kind in 10 years, we have a good starting point to initiate what should be an ongoing conversation and plan of action about creating long-term economic opportunity, development, and empowerment of all minority groups in Nassau County, and I emphasize all. To accomplish that goal, the Office of Minority Affairs must fulfill its responsibilities that are enumerated in the county charter for the development, advancement, and betterment of economic, employment, business, and cultural opportunities for minority residents of the county, and the improvement and stabilization of economically deprived areas of the county. Thus, it is imperative that the Office of Minority Affairs is in the forefront to facilitate constructive dialogue, creating networking opportunities for individuals and businesses, and synthesizing innovative ideas that will result in socioeconomic advancement for community that we serve. The powers and duties of the Office of Minority Affairs includes assisting other departments and personnel in improving the delivery of quality of life services such as social services, mental health services, and public works projects, as well as providing access and opportunity for minority and women business enterprise to participate in the county contract and procurement process. Undoubtedly, a strong and consistent leader at the helm is required. That is why our conversation tonight must also address the urgent need to appoint a qualified executive director and provide the appropriate staff and tools so that this office can carry out the disparity study that will analyze the county's utilization of minority and women business-owned enterprises in county contracting. Thus, the Office of Minority Affairs can be an invaluable resource to a minority or women-owned business that is seeking to get their fair share by bidding on over $600 million of county business. In closing, I reiterate that this meeting should be the first of ongoing dialogue about moving forward and upward, not including a retrogressive thought and actions. Although there are social and educational and economic and health challenges that must be addressed and counteracted within the minority community, there is a wealth of talent and untapped potential. I look forward to working with my colleagues in government, business, and educational leaders, residents, and community advocates to make the Office of Minority Affairs and the people the office represents a top priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Legislator Szilagyi. What my intention is to have the administration make its presentation. We would like all the speakers from the administration to speak first before we open the floor to questions. My intention, if there's no objection from members of the committee, is to have individual legislators ask their questions, but we ask that you try and limit yourselves based on time to somewhere in the area of around 8 to 10 minutes. It's not a hard and fast time frame because I want to make sure we do have an opportunity to get to members of the public. And I suspect that based upon the number of people that we have here and based upon the number of topics that we have to cover, as I said, we probably will be having further hearings in the future. But with that, do we know who's batting leadoff?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll bat leadoff. Thank you very much, Legislator Rhodes. I appreciate the opening remarks made by both you and Legislator Szilagyi, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. This is an important topic because there's no question that the county executive and her entire administration is very committed to engaging our communities and opening the doors to Nassau County services, including opportunities to do business with the county. Before we, really kick off the discussion about contracting, which I think is the primary focus of this hearing, we just want to say that the county executive has prioritized this policy of an inclusiveness, engagement, and attention to our citizens in a very diverse constituency throughout the tenure. So we also want to note our efforts on language access, on complete count within the census discussion that's taking place right now. The creation of the Office of Asian American Affairs, which you have mentioned already today. In the Office of Hispanic Affairs, and I use that term because we're submitting legislation to rename CASA with a name that we think is more appropriate. We're also moving the office, Gabby Castillo and her team will be moving up from the basement of the building at 40 Main Street onto the first floor to new welcoming office space. And I think it's symbolic of the efforts this administration is taking to open the doors, to be welcoming to all of our constituencies, and to sort of bring on the next chapter. Because I think while you may hear today some comments about things that were better before or done differently, we are making a concerted effort in this regard. It takes some time, but we are just getting started in what we're planning to do. So I want to thank all the colleagues of mine who've joined us today for this presentation, because whether you're talking about language access, moving the Hispanic office, creating a new Office of Asian Affairs, we have been all about opening the doors, being more welcoming to our constituents, and finding ways to make county government open to them, not just in terms of the contracting. This new standard, though, does apply directly to our efforts to increase participation in contracting with the county. So, as we've said, we wanted people to be able to do business in the county and do business with the county. My colleague John Chiara has really headed that up along with the IT team in terms of procurement systems, which were broken when we got here. So we have been in the process of really trying to make everything more transparent, and my colleague John will speak to that. But let's face it, increased participation is good for everyone, right? It's good for our minority communities. It ensures greater competition, lower cost, better services. It can strengthen the communities. It can encourage entrepreneurship, which is something that we all talk about all the time, and yet here in our own backyard in Nassau County, in terms of our contracting, we were not doing a very good job. And as I mentioned, it promotes open, fair, and transparent processes, which I think we all agree, no matter what the subject matter is, we need to be as transparent as possible. So as we go through our presentation and answer your questions, you may have questions about numbers and goals and all kinds of things. One of the things we found is that the systems were not in place to fully track what needs to be tracked to really make a meaningful difference in this area. So we've taken a multi-pronged approach to increase participation. We've established a county vendor portal. We've eliminated a $125 vendor registration fee, and I'm just going to touch on these issues and my colleagues will dive in more. We've created a solicitation tracking system for MWBE disadvantaged businesses and service-disabled veteran-owned businesses, so that we can actually track within our own county systems which vendors we're doing business with. Again, a first step to doing a good job is knowing your facts, and we've been very focused on that. And thanks to the support of the the Minority Caucus, the county has put aside funding, $500,000 in the capital budget, to support a disparity study, which is an absolutely critical element in establishing any goals for meaningful minority participation. Before I turn over to my colleagues who are going to address different issues, I just want to say a little word about OMA staffing. At present, we have 4 full-time employees at OMA. That includes Ms. Mazawala, Dr. Williams, who is our acting executive director, and 2 program coordinators, Dexter Hedgepath and Rashad Mitchell. We fully understand that we have not staffed up this office, that there is authorized vacant headcount that needs to be filled. We have posted for an administrative assistant position, and we do intend to move forward on additional hiring. To be frank, the holdup has been that we do not have a permanent executive director. The county executive is anxious to have a permanent executive director in this position, and the process by which we got to today, I'm sure we will end up discussing. But as you all know, it is a 3-part process that requires input from the council, of the Minority Affairs Council. It requires a county executive to make a choice and the legislature to approve. And we sit here today without a permanent executive director because that process has not worked. We are anxious to see it work. We have urged the council to bring forward the next candidate, and the position was open and posted until yesterday. So we are very optimistic that the Minority Affairs Council will provide the county executive with additional resume or resumes of candidates that are qualified for the position, and that we will be able to move quickly forward in picking someone to be permanently in this position. In the meanwhile, we appreciate very much Regina Williams' willingness to take this position. She took a leave of absence from her position on the Minority Affairs Council. We felt she was a logical choice to step in and provide leadership within this office at this time. So I'll leave that. I'm sure you'll have more questions about it, but I'd like to just turn things over to Ms. Mazzawala, who, as I mentioned, was managing the office for us for the first year of the administration. Back in April, she was asked by the county executive to take on a new role, staffing a new Asian American Advisory Board. Yesterday, you took an important step in creating a new office to do outreach to that community. But in the meantime, she has kindly agreed to discuss some of the functions of the Office of Minority Affairs and our efforts over the last year. Thank you.
The Office of Minority Affairs. The Office of Minority Affairs was created to develop and strengthen underrepresented communities within Nassau County. The office supports minority residents in receiving improved economic, employment, business, and cultural opportunities. OMA serves as the principal advocate for minority and women-owned businesses, disadvantaged business enterprises, and service-disabled veteran-owned business enterprises in Nassau County. Outreach is how we assess the needs of these marginalized communities. We have numerous meetings with stakeholders to listen to and address their concerns. We've met with minority and women-owned businesses, Chamber of Commerce, such as LIAC, Long Island African American Chamber of Commerce, Hicksville Chamber of Commerce, Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, CDFIs, which are community development financial institutions, small business development centers such as Farmingdale and Westbury. We are also part of the Comptroller's Steering Committee. This outreach helped us to develop a plan to slowly move the needle to eliminate barriers of entry and increase participation for our MWBEs. In our outreach meetings and in our discussions with the county executive, an issue that kept on coming up was the 125 vendor fee. It was a hindrance for MWBEs and other small businesses. The administration took the step of introducing legislation to eliminate this fee, which has been removed as a barrier of entry, and we are seeing more registrations because of this. So should I go over the?
Yeah, that's
okay.
good. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So I think we can go back to the slide.
Okay, that's fine. I'll go back to this. Sure.
So as you can see, the number
Excuse me
of
for 1 second. Do we actually have paper copies of the presentation?
No, but we can provide them to you afterwards if you'd like.
So we've had a 135% increase in vendor registration overall since January 2019, when our fee was removed. In 2018, some of the highlights from our administration. The stakeholders in the community relied on OMA as being a central clearinghouse for information and support to help underserved small businesses in Nassau County and to assist small businesses in navigating the state and county's procurement and certification systems. That's why we hosted numerous workshops and forums to address their needs. As you can see from the slide, some of the workshops and forums that we did. The office also organized and co-sponsored numerous cultural events to celebrate the county's diversity, such as our Kwanzaa celebration and our Black History Month celebration. OMA has also been collaborating with the county's procurement office and information technology, as they have put systems in place to improve transparency, participation, and compliance in county contracting. I will have Deputy County John Chiara now will give you a bit more information on how this new procurement system works.
Good afternoon. So as I'm sure many of you know, the County Executive Curran, one of the main goals that she set when we first came into the administration was setting up systems that could ensure anti-corruption measures and to ensure compliance with the county procurement compliance policy. One of these areas that we identified early on that needed attention in how the previous administration was tracking their compliance was the area of compliance with minority and women business enterprises. After about a half a year of design and testing, last summer, the administration launched the solicitation tracking system. And I know many of you know about that system. I think I've met with some of you specifically about that system. And we've discussed not only that system, but the other systems that this administration has put forward. This electronic platform monitors and tracks each department's compliance with a variety of county policies. Many of these policies are things that the legislature is regularly interested in, things as how how competitive the process was. But also included in this is policies related to minority and women business enterprises. Specifically, advance notice to the Office of Minority Affairs of any formal competitive solicitation, flagging of any solicitation that includes federal and state minority and women business enterprise goals, and submission of required utilization plans. The Office of IT, Procurement, and Office of Minority Affairs are working collaboratively to continue to add functionality to both the solicitation tracking system and also the electronic contract routing system to monitor good faith efforts and participation for performance, and to ensure that systems can support the identification of minority and women-owned businesses, promote them during the solicitation practice. This platform has enabled the county to track solicitations, and it will continue to, especially if the county, based on a disparity study, moves forward on specific goals. Finally, I think it was discussed one of the barriers for minority and women-owned businesses was this registration fee. But also another barrier is the county's clumsy payment system. And small businesses, and a lot of the small businesses are women and minority-owned businesses, are hindered by the county's slow payment. And the county is in the process of developing a claims application that not only is going to speed up how we pay our vendors, but it's also going to enable the county to capture the minority and women business enterprise participation at the initiation of the claim for payment. This will eliminate the need for expensive and time-consuming data entry, and it'll provide much more accurate information not only to the administration on our progress, but also to the legislature. I will now turn it over to Dr. Williams, who will conclude our presentation.
Good afternoon. Let me address some of the things that I have noticed in my 6 to 7 week tenure being in the office. One of the things that I noticed is the manual entry of certifications that we still have. So I took the liberty of meeting with the IT department to put together a program that will make the most out of the electronic system that has already been developed over the past year. Also reviewing the database of registered vendors to develop a plan for outreach that will seek to engage them in our programs. The certification process currently for our constituents involves them going on the link, printing out the document, manually completing the documents, as well as manually mailing them in or dropping them off to the Office of Minority Affairs. So we're trying to streamline the process to make it easier for our constituents. We're working collaboratively with the other county departments and other government partners to promote opportunities for our community. Recent and planned forums that we've had include a collaboration with the Port Authority of New Jersey held at Nassau Community College, in which we were assisting them as they were allowing MWBEs to become certified through their electronic process there. We also have a pre-bid info conference with the Department of Public Works on the family and matrimonial court project that's coming up. And then we're continuing work with the SIN 2020 that was just launched in March of this year. I'm also excited to say that our team will be working with the New York State Empire Development regarding the NWBE opportunities in the Belmont redevelopment project Here, they will host, the Empire State Development will host one or even two forums here in Nassau County, something they haven't done before with their staff, will help with the NWBEs submitting their applications for New York State certification. Currently, research has shown that the state certification process, which is quite lengthy, in the beginning of the certification process, a lot of them have difficulty when it comes to the documentation. So by them being on site and assisting the NWBEs, it will allow them to further move the process along. OMA will also be spearheading the county's disparity study that was recently approved by the legislature as part of the capital plan. I will also say that we're pleased that the members of the Minority Caucus pushed for this study. We thank you because it is an important and a critical step in our efforts and has not been done by the county since 2003. The Office of Minority Affairs will be working with other agencies and the county attorney's office to develop the scope of work necessary for this disparity study. So yes, you're absolutely right. The right person at the helm of this is going to be necessary in order for all of this to come together. But we expect to have a draft scope of work within the next month and to issue the RFP over the summer. Thank you.
Has given her membership on the Minority Affairs Council, but that's our presentation for
All right, we
today.
appreciate that. Thank you. We're going to open it up now to questions from individual legislators. Chair will recognize first Legislator John Ferretti, who is sitting in for Legislator James Kennedy. The reason we're calling him first is because he has to leave shortly to go pick up his son. So, and they wouldn't let Chris do it. So.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you everyone here tonight to speak on this issue. I appreciate the presentation. Just a few questions, and really, it's open to anyone that can answer them. How many MWBs are there currently in Nassau County?
That's a good question. We have the registered in the system? Did we go back to that?
You
mean registered in the system or certified? Yeah, so, okay, so this slide here reflects the number of self-identified MWBEs in the new vendor portal, okay? So it's over 500.
And how do we keep track of them? Do we survey these companies?
Then the new vendor portal allows individuals to self-identify themselves as a minority-owned business, a woman-owned business, a service-disabled veteran-owned business, or a minority woman, and it's a self-identification process. What Dr. Williams was referring to was the effort we're now ongoing. I mean, obviously, we just changed this vendor fee in January. The floodgates have opened for participation and registration, so we're in the process of reviewing that list. We're going to be taking it and putting it against the list of certified vendors within the county, and we know we'll have better numbers for you on that. But we're hoping that we can use the new tool as a way to do a lot more outreach and empowerment to actually win bids. Because I'm not sure what was done in the prior administration, but the fact that people didn't even sign up to be vendors because of the fee, we think was a major barrier to entering, and the numbers are really bearing that out. Now, taking that and going forward into empowerment, getting folks registered, helping them decide should they get registered with the county or should they just, as Dr. Williams was just describing, maybe go for state certification, because state certification is very meaningful and opens all kinds of doors to opportunity. Maybe the county is going to be more involved in helping vendors do that, as we're going to try to do with the Belmont project by hosting a forum here.
So what is the process for getting certified? Is it just self-identifying? I mean, what exactly is the process?
So let Farah handle it.
So to become a Nassau County certified MWBE, there's a long form or a short form. The short form is if you're already a state or port authority certified, then you would fill out a short form. The long form, which is you would have to be in business for a year. We would do a couple of site visits, and you'd have to have documentation, what type of corporation you are, and different documents that you would need, and then we would certify you as an MWBE for Nassau County. Going forward, my suggestion would be that we need to consider maybe doing an MOU with the state to somehow work with them on this, because once the disparity study is completed, if you don't address these questions, then we'll be sitting here next year too.
The other piece of it is also the concern of what do you really get if you are certified by Nassau County, right? Because what does that really mean? From what I understand, it is included in the utilization plans that the departments prepare that are required by the county, but again, tracking of that has been less than ideal. And we've also understood that that it's a lot of process to what benefit. So one of the things we're looking at very seriously is creating a directory of certified vendors that would be available and posted publicly on the county's website, so that if it just is a matter of publicity for them in terms of you have this, it's a brand of approval and involvement in something with the county, so that it has a little more meaning. I'm new here, but I think that it's unclear what that really meant, because the county lacked proper goals for MWB participation, so therefore the utilization plans were not as meaningful as they could be. If you start to combine all of this together, utilization plans, if you have a disparity study that has meaningful goals set in it, and then you also publicize that information in some way, you really can really open up the doors in a way that we haven't seen before.
Thank you for that response.
I would just like to add, you really need to look at the numbers of where, and I thank the legislature for this, for eliminating this registration fee. It's where these numbers have come is really remarkable. We went from having a handful of registered minority and women-owned businesses to having hundreds of them, and it's really remarkable, and it really is the beginning of a lot of progress I think that can be made. And we're talking well over 10-20% of our registered vendors now are women and minority-owned businesses, and we're only at the 4th month right here, and that is to me where Nassau County can take the next step in being able to reach out to those vendors and make a difference in this area.
Thank you. What are we doing as a county to reach out to reach out to these different groups? What active policies do we have, or what exactly are we doing to engage these groups? I understand that we're reducing some of the obstacles, but what are we doing to reach out?
Well, I think that one of the things Dr. Williams was describing is some new initiatives that we're planning to build on top of what the Office of Minority Affairs has already done. I also want to say just that there should be some collaboration here amongst other county agencies, and whether it's on job promotion, on the Hub project, where we expect to have MWBE considered within our community development plan, community benefits plan, excuse me. There's a lot of opportunities for collaboration, and OMA, although we will staff up, it doesn't need to do this alone. And I think what we're trying to ensure is some meaningful collaboration. So when we talk about events, we know that OMA is working with the Comptroller's Office on a variety of events. We're looking for opportunities, like we just did with the Port Authority, to host a forum where people can learn about how to become certified with the Port Authority, so that Nassau County businesses who do that kind of work for the rebuilding of JFK can learn how to be certified by the Port Authority. Similarly with ESD. So our programs are being developed for this coming year. Regina has been in the office for only a short time, but we have, with the help of our team members, Rashad and Dexter in the office, are developing a calendar for the year. There'll be plenty of outreach, at least one event a month, and like I said, we're creating some new ideas, like our event with Empire State Development, which I really think could be very exciting. The Belmont Project is a huge opportunity for participation in this area.
Okay.
And
what, if any, requirements does the county have in terms of insurance and bonding?
I'm not sure I understand. I think it depends on the project. That may be a DPW question. Yeah, I think that may be a question for DPW.
Okay. Okay, could that be a possible obstacle to?
It may well be.
I mean,
Okay.
I could just say, depending on the type of project, certain bonding and insurance is required, and it certainly could be an obstacle. And I mean, you also have to see, it could be an obstacle, but also, one of the big areas where, you're going to get minority and women-owned business involvement is by subcontracting, and it's less of an obstacle there.
And
Okay,
I
thank
could-
you.
There's another obstacle that we hear a lot about, which is access to capital, obviously generally. And I know this is an issue of interest to Legislator Bino. There is a state program that's fairly robust. They have offered to come present on that to the next forum that the Office of Minority Affairs hosts, and we do hope to have that happen. I mean, I think we may need to create something new, and we may already have what's necessary through various state programs, but it's definitely an area that has come to our attention and is something that we're looking at.
And I also want to just, one other, as to your last point about outreach, is, which was an innovation in the current procurement policy, is that the Office of Minority Affairs gets advance notice of county RFPs and solicitations. And in that advance notice, the Office of Minority Affairs is notified at, and they do outreach to specific vendors on the certified list to identify these, to make sure that those businesses, A, aren't missing them, which sometimes happens, and B, sees it as an opportunity to maybe reach out to a prime contractor and identify themselves as a possible partner in a contract. I don't know if you have anything else to add?
Well, so what we do is about every couple of weeks, we'll send out an email blast to every single MWBE on our certification list to tell them about the procurements. And then we'll identify if there's something that we know that, because we've had so many meetings with these stakeholders, say if there's something on scanning and we see a bid for scanning, so then I will contact the 4 or 5 scanning companies that I know of and say, hey, you know what, there was a bid, I just emailed it out, can you check on that bid? Or if there's something in engineering, then I would, whatever we have of the names, I would just call a couple of them up. Or if there was something food services, that's another entity that a lot of MWBEs are. There's certain areas where the NWBE numbers are higher than in other NISAC codes. So the ones that we know, like when we see the bids and we say, oh, wow, this could be something that our community can benefit from, we'll try to call some of them or send out an extra email to them.
Legislator Freddie, you have a final question?
Yes, one last question. So just assume there's a global project it's a large project that perhaps couldn't be handled in and of itself by a minority-owned business. Is there any consideration given to breaking up that project into several pieces, in order to provide opportunities to those businesses? And if so, has that been done?
So I think the
Under
majority of
this
the
administration.
DPW projects are subcontracted projects, not prime, because a lot of the projects, you can't be a prime contractor and be an MWBE because there's an income limit. So majority of the projects that MWBEs do partake in regards to DPW are subcontracting projects.
So that's the practice as currently?
And just as an example of that, the Family and Matrimonial Court building, the next stage of the work is going to be the interiors. So we're working with DPW and their vendor, their Prime, on a pre-bid conference for subcontracting opportunities. And it's essentially that, right? Because the painting, the flooring, things that we know from our outreach and our lists and our history, that those contracts offer some real opportunities for participation. So we'll do a special event on that next month.
Okay, thank you.
That's probably
again.
going to be the most exciting because, that's
It's a
where
major
we'll
project, yeah.
There's some projects like marine diving and stuff, which we don't have anybody for, but projects like this, I think we'll be able to get a lot.
Okay, thank you for your responses.
Okay, thank you, Legislator Ferretti. Chair recognizes Legislator Szilagyi.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair. Just want to get straight to some important questions. According to data provided by the Office of Legislative Budget Review, OLBR, the total amount of the county's contractual spending that was awarded to minority and women business enterprises was 11.1% in 2016, 11.9% in 2017, and 11.1% in 2018. How did the county collect data to calculate these percentages?
So it's my understanding this is a performance metric that is done by DPW, and they're the department that track this information. But I think I understand your concern, legislator, is that we actually think that this data is not quite up to date because of data entry, and also, we also think that it possibly misses some subcontractors, specifically supplier of goods, underneath some of these subcontractors.
But
we
you
are-
did provide this data to the Office of Legislative Budget
Well,
Review.
unfortunately, this is the best data that the systems have right now, but we are actually, as I think I said in my opening remarks, we are addressing this in our claims application by making it part of the payment process that the numbers are put in there, which is going to allow the county and your body to much better understand where exactly the money and the subs are coming from in a much more meaningful manner, and not just limited to some of limited to the projects that are covered in there. So I don't know if that answers your question, but you are correct. Also, if you look at the list, some of it is self-identified versus non-self-identified. And I think also when you look at data that comes from that, that also needs some more clarification.
So did more business go to the self-identified or the certified?
Well, actually, if you look at it in 2018, the numbers went up for certified versus self-identified. But what we're looking to do in our just so you understand, we're looking to take the utilization plans, which are now required in order for a solicitation to move forward the path. Under the Chief Procurement Officer, he monitors this. And we're looking to take those utilization plans, and then those numbers were going to be built we'll move that number data into the claims application. So we're literally being able to track, the vendor said they could do this amount of women in minority businesses, and then they have to report that. And why this is so meaningful is in the current system that the county has, where we have aspirational goals, it's not so meaningful. But if we had hard goals like the state or the city of New York, then we'll be able to track this meaningfully. Because what happens if you don't meet some of your goals is there could be consequences to the vendor.
What are your aspirational goals?
What are my aspirational goals?
For the department, please.
Well, let me just say this, the purpose of, this is a highly technical, I don't know if you guys have, people have reviewed some of the disparity studies, but basically the purpose of the disparity study is to look at not only specific regions or counties or towns or areas, is to take the specific areas and towns, but also to look at the specific, area of work, whether it's construction, supply of goods, and to look where there's underutilization of women in minority-owned businesses. And that's the purpose, is to get the numbers where there's underutilization in these areas. And that's, I would say, not only the purpose, but it's a critical information that the county needs to make, whether it's aspirational goals or whether it's hard, fast goals, where those numbers would come from.
And you can't accomplish that without a disparity study.
No.
But you do have a disparity study from 2003 or 2004 that studied data from 1998 to 2002, in which you saw that there was at least $284 million in construction projects. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's correct.
Correct. So if you had at least $284 million of construction projects during that time span between 98 and 2002, and here we are in 2019, what would you say is some reasonable aspirational goals for us to accomplish?
You couldn't, in good conscience, base make a logical decision on a report that's almost 20, has data that's over 20 years old. Nassau County has changed dramatically. The businesses in Nassau County have grown and flourished, I think, in the last 20 years since I was in high school. So you couldn't come up with any numbers, I believe, based on that report.
You stated that the office has, in your presentation, that the office has currently a staffing of 4. I also asked the Office of OLBR to produce a report showing the staffing levels throughout the year. In 2004, the staffing level was 6. 2005, it was 11. 2006, it was 11. 2008, it was 8. And that was the last year you had an attorney on staff, to my understanding. 2010, it was 8. 2012, it was 7. 2014, it was 7. 2016, it was 6. 2018, it was 3. And 2019, it is 4. As you can see, there has been a significant reduction in staff, and the county charter states some very important goals for this office to accomplish. how can you reasonably accomplish the goals of the county charter, specifically enumerated in part section 212, sub 3, from A to letter G, G most importantly being affirmative action? How can you accomplish all those important goals, which has 4 people?
So, legislator, you're absolutely right that the charter is very broad, and the mandate is extremely important. And I think, as I said in my opening remarks, we're just beginning. I know you see 16 months, but you have to understand that during that time, we were focusing on finding an executive director. That process is still ongoing and has had its bumps in the road, but we are determined to staff this office up. Like many departments within this county, we found things not exactly staffed up.
Would it be
So
fair to
at
say
the-
that
at
this
the-
office, I'm sorry for interrupting.
At the
please
end of
continue.
2017, what was the number that, do you have the number there? I'm sorry.
In 2019,
No, 17,
2017.
before the county
it
executive came on board.
was 6.
6. At the end of the term? At the end of
Well,
the
I
prior
don't have data for
administration?
2017,
Okay.
but
Yeah,
I
I
have
don't
data
think
for
there were 6
2016,
people
it was
on
6.
staff. I don't believe there were 6 people on staff when the county executive, Laura Curran, came in. In any case, we will be rebuilding this office. We will be filling vacant headcount. I appreciate very much the focus of that, and I assure you that we mean business to take care of what this, do the mandated functions of the office.
Would it be fair to say that the nature of this office is not a service-driven office, but more so a compliance-driven office? Is that fair to say?
I think it's both in terms of service to the population. We want to know about the opportunities in the county. There's a service piece to that. We are here, we want a staff that can do customer service, right? So if people are interested in doing business with the county, if that's what you mean.
But there are state and federal
There are
regulations in
obviously
which
state and
this
federal
office is
regulations,
responsible
which this
for providing
responsible
compliance.
this office is doing its compliance responsibilities. Ms. Mazzawala led that up during the first year, and Ms. Regina Williams has been trained and is currently handling all compliance issues. There are also other departments within the county that handle some aspects of compliance with overlap to OMA, which includes our Nice Bus service, where DPW directly has a team that handle Nice Bus service. Because especially where there's funding at stake for the county through federal and state sources, we make sure that compliance is accomplished.
Compliance understandably would require the presence of an attorney on staff. Is that correct?
I don't know that to be true.
Would an attorney be helpful in making sure that your office helps the county comply with certain regulations?
We work closely with, first of all, I'm an attorney. The department reports to me. But I don't serve as an attorney in this office. But I do have the judgment to bring in county attorney's office, to bring in my DCE for compliance, who's also an attorney, to seek out advice and counsel to make sure the county stays fully compliant. So I don't argue with you that it would maybe something to have an attorney on staff, but my understanding is that goes back quite a few years, at least 5, from the last time the office had an attorney on staff. And at your suggestion, we would welcome an attorney either at the head of the office
If you were to
or in a
rely upon
different
the county
position.
attorney's office for legal advice, wouldn't that be a conflict of interest?
I'm not aware that it would be. But in any case, let me just say, we have a current opening for an executive director for the Office of Minority Affairs. We did not require a JD for that position. However, if someone were to apply for that position with that sort of a background, and we certainly did post a position for someone with familiarity and expertise in NWBE compliance. So we didn't specifically say attorney, but we are looking for a candidate who has that background, and we would welcome someone with that background for this position.
What role will the executive director play in the selection of the appropriate consultant that will assist with the creation of the disparity study?
The Office of Minority Affairs is going to be responsible for the crafting of an RFP to select a vendor to do the study. But right now, we are in the process of reviewing other disparity studies and the RFPs that led to those studies. For example, we've gotten our hands on the RFP that led to the New York City disparity study, most recently done, I think, within the last 2 years, because we think it'll save us some time and help us draft a scope of work that's appropriate and can be a good basis for our effort so that we can move quickly.
Is there a civil service position in your office?
I'm sorry,
for-
and DC Chiara explained to me that we already have a draft of our study based on the New York City model. But again, we're going to be looking at it closely to make sure it reflects Nassau County's needs.
Is there a civil service position for affirmative action officer in your office?
I'm not aware of one. A civil service position, I'm not aware.
How many of the 4 staffers you have now, how many are civil service, how many are ordinance?
They're all ordinance.
Oh, ordinance, okay. And just to my understanding, the New York City disparity study is done by the same entity as the Nassau County
I'm
disparity
sorry,
study?
I'm sorry, legislator, repeat
The
that?
New York City, their disparity study has been conducted by the same entity as Nassau County, MGT? Is that?
Yeah, so we, in order to prepare a request for a proposal, the county's chief procurement officer reached out to New York City to get a copy of their request for proposal from their study. And because it is a very solid working draft, it led to a successful solicitation. So we use that as a working draft, just like we do in other areas. It's a public document, but we often sometimes will, use our neighbors that have done this before. And it has, it's very fruitful and it saves time.
I have several more questions, but I'm just going to ask one more, and I'll allow my colleagues to ask some questions. Part B of in the enumerated powers of the office states that a minority impact statement must be delivered to the legislature. When was the last time your office delivered such an assessment statement?
So we have not found a record of one of those statements in the files of the Office of Minority Affairs. We have not done one in the time that we've been here. The last time, I think there was a draft, from what I've been told, back in 2013 or 2014 perhaps. So I hear your question, and that's the best I can do for an answer. It has not been done in some time. If by the words community impact assessment, a disparity study actually would provide a lot of the information that we would be looking for in terms of, what's the impact on the community of these opportunities, what is the possibility for participation. And so we actually think that the disparity study, if we can get one done quickly, will provide some very useful information for the county legislature, for the county executive, and all of us as we're trying to address these issues. But to our knowledge, there has not been a community impact statement of the one described in quite some time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Legislator Szilagyi. Legislator Walker?
Thank you. I'm going to just ask some general questions first. As far as I know, we now have no vendor fee, okay? So we now have many, many more women and other businesses giving their information in so that they can become a vendor. Now, to be certified, there's county certification and you said state certification. Mm-hmm. Are there fees associated with those certifications?
For the county certification, there is no fee, and I don't think there's a fee for the state certification either.
Okay, so now, once they become, so their names are submitted, you have all the list of vendors or whatever. If they do not apply for some kind of or do they have to apply for some type of certification to be considered for job opportunity, business opportunities?
For business opportunities in the county, they don't need to be certified by the county. For business opportunities that are state, because a lot of our DPW projects require utilization plans, and those projects have hard goals set by New York State, so they have to be state certified MWBEs to apply for those projects as subcontractors. But for the county projects, because we don't have a disparity study, you can't legally have a hard goal. So we have soft aspirational goals, but there's no hard goal, so you don't have to really be certified by the county.
Okay, now do we share that with everyone who becomes a vendor, so that they know that if they're, they might be qualified to have a job with a state, under a state contract, but they can't because they don't have, they didn't certify themselves. Do we make sure that we give that information out? Do we educate all the vendors on all the possibilities to help them to have better opportunities to get bids on these jobs?
Yes, we try our best with our outreach efforts through our forums and our workshops and just our email blasts to try to get them to register as state vendors. We even have workshops to help them get the MWBE certification in the county and how they would go to get the state certification.
Okay, and obviously, we've had many, many new people, you know, now become vendors. Do we discuss with those vendors, was it just that initial fee that was holding them back, or were there other things that they feel that we could be of assistance with to, you know, help them be able to land job opportunities?
Yeah, I think DC Chiara mentioned the back end and the payments and all the difficulties of just doing business with the county, which really, you know, make a lot of people stay away from this particular work, but we are making a concerted effort here. I mean, I know some of our presentation may have sounded a little processy, but when you look at the process of the county and how we do things and how long it takes and payments are slow and all of that, it affects our, you know, companies that want to do business with us, it affects the nonprofits that we work with. So, you know, I really think that, you know, we are in the process of trying to make things easier to do business with us, and we think that will have some effect. But I'm not sure there were any other issues that have come up as suggested that we need to address.
But we do try to reach.
One of the ideas that we mentioned before is that we're going to get a hold of all these names and information and do a blast out of some sort. Now that we have them, we have emails, we can say, you know, we're here, we have an office, we have people who are willing to meet with you, talk about, you know, it's going to be time consuming, but we think it'll be worth it in the end if we can do some outreach and try to get folks engaged more meaningfully in the actual opportunities.
And do we share our information with other municipalities? I know for a period of time, I was working, actually was right across the street at the One Stop Center. We were helping people get back into the work, especially after 9/11, when a lot of people had lost their jobs, and many of them very high-paying jobs. And it's very difficult because obviously they would like another high-paying job, which some of them at that moment did not exist. But all we could do to help them from every aspect. For many people never wrote a resume in their life, you know, and starting from the very, very beginning. But I also, one day a week, I used to go to the Department of Labor, and I would address a group there. And sometimes I felt like, you know, it was a battle between the state and what was happening in you know, the towns, what they were doing at these one-stop centers. You know, and I said, well, isn't the idea that we help these people get back to work? Like, nobody's going to get an extra gold star next to their name, but it was very territorial, and I felt like that was a big issue to have to deal with, and I really tried to work together with them, and, you know, try to ease those burdens and barriers. Do we do that too with with business opportunities that we work together?
We have, I believe, and we can also, do that. The Office of Minority Affairs does participate in the larger job fair program that DSS operates. That's under Kyle Rose-Louder's vertical. Within the Office of Minority Affairs, Dexter Hedgepeth does a wonderful program where it talks about, you know, sort of getting ready to present yourself for business opportunities. And I think, you know, we'll take it under advisement that that's something we should make sure we keep doing.
Okay, and even within our own county, work with our other departments and see what can we do. What are some opportunities they might have that we can share and work together to benefit both, you know, both departments.
And we're also, just Legislator Walker, just to follow up, we're also working, our Department of Shared Service is trying to, you know, work on more what they call piggyback contracts, where other municipalities can use contracts that we have already procured to save them time and money. We've also had a series, as I'm sure you're aware, the police vehicle shared service contract with Westchester County and Suffolk County. So we're trying to work collaboratively with other counties, but for the goal that the municipal governments within our county can use these contracts to save money and time that would take them, because, you know, we have a purchasing department with many employees that can work on these things. Some of these small villages and towns, especially the villages, don't have the resources that the county has. Even though we are in some areas that, you know, sometimes we haven't had the full resources over the last several years. But we have a lot more resources, and we're using those resources to try to help the villages and the other districts in the county.
Great, okay. As far as the executive director, now, technically, right now, we have an acting person, and thank you very much for that. Has there been, I know you said there's been a lot of bumps along the way, as with many things, there's a lot of bumps along the way, but I mean, is there a particular problem? I mean, that we're having
Yeah.
difficulty?
I'll address that. No, look, I think it's an important position. But it's a unique position in the way the candidate is selected. You know, again, I go back to, I'm a little new here, but this is an unusual situation where the charter calls for a Minority Affairs Council that first has to be set up and active. And when county executive came on board, there were vacancies in that council. It took time to get a fully seated council. That didn't happen until May. And then once the council reviews candidates, the county executive could choose someone who does not come through the council process, but it has been her preference, her strong preference, to hear from the council as to who they recommend for the position. So the council went through a process this summer of a search process. So that, as I said, I won't go into the details of that unless you want me to, but essentially the process requires recommendation from the council. County executive can interview, select, and then it has to come to the legislature for approval, right? So that's not the same with every department head.
But doesn't the charter say it has to come through the council?
Yeah, yes. Candidate or candidates. I only meant to imply that they could provide more than one candidate for the county executive to consider. I apologize. So that process has happened once so far this year.
So the council could
Recommend someone. Right.
highly recommend someone or recommend someone, and then it goes before the county executive.
Right, and that happened once already this year.
Right.
It happened this fall. The council recommended one candidate to the county executive. County executive interviewed that candidate, felt very strongly that that candidate could do the job and lead the office. And unfortunately, it became clear that that candidate could not get through the legislative process, so we started again.
Okay.
You have a final question?
That's all for right now. I might have others as we move along.
Thank you, Legislator Walker. Legislator Millet?
Thank you. I have 3 lines of question. The first is about the disparity study. We've been talking a lot about that. Can you give us a time frame for, you mentioned that the RFP has to go out, then once the RFP happens, how long will the study take, and at what point will it become available to us here in the legislature?
Our hope is that we have a draft copy. Right now, we're hoping to advertise that in late May, early June. You have to give a pretty good amount of time, I would say, 30 to 60 days during advertising it to make sure you get, a good amount of people to look at it. It's going to take a long time to respond to. It's a very complex area. And then we're going to see and I'm not going to be on the selection committee, we'll see, who the proposals will, like all proposals, will vary on how long it will take them. But it is a long process. I mean, the New York City did one fairly recently, and it took a long time.
What does a long time mean?
It takes approximately a year to
Okay.
do the study, is my understanding. And then they make recommendations, and there's a lot of back and forth on those recommendations, and then the legislature will get the report, and based on that is what the legislature with county executive wants to make recommendations on whether you're going to make soft or hard goals, and that will be all within the report. But these reports are highly complex, hundreds and hundreds of pages. So it's not something I have never went through one of these processes before, and I guess the county has in about almost 17 years. But it's not a quick process.
So
But we are working extremely fast to move that process along, and I think it's critically important that we get when the council comes up with a recommendation that we can move the executive director, because that's a critical function that they need to do, not only oversee some of the MBE compliance, but this is a critical function that the office needs to work on.
To that end, we did send a letter yesterday to the Minority Affairs Council The chair, or the acting chair, I'm not sure if she is away right now, so I'm not sure it got circulated to all the council members, but we did send it, notifying them of the disparity study, making sure they're aware of the important work that needs to be done, which OMA will be very involved in, so that they can take that into consideration as they consider candidates. As I mentioned, the posting for the position closed yesterday. So they're going to be reviewing candidates for the executive director position, hopefully very quickly over the next few weeks, and offer a candidate or candidate to the county executive for consideration. So we wanted them to be aware of the disparity study because it's a very important function of the office. Sorry if I
Okay, no,
interrupted
that's
you.
okay. So
Okay.
doing the math, it sounds like the very earliest we could expect to see one would be fall of 2020, is that correct?
I mean,
The very
Try to do it
earliest.
quicker.
yeah, I mean, you know, we're trying to
move
move we just got the funding, we're trying to move it along as quickly as we can.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the issue is we don't really know, there was a, when New York City did their disparity study, there was a somewhat recent disparity study before that, and I don't know, I can't answer your question with whether that made it a faster process or a slower process. You know, this is something that, you know, the timing of it would be something that would be within the RFP that the vendors would recommend to the county how long it would take them, and it's a consideration that the selection committee could take or not take, depending on the makeup of it, in order to ascertain which is the best vendor.
Okay.
But I'm sure there's a varying times that it would take depending on who the vendor is, and there is a handful of vendors that do this, but there's not a lot of them either.
And how often should a disparity study be done? Are there,
I
Any-
can't answer that question. No, sorry.
Okay. Is it safe to say that having one from 2003 is too long?
I think that's safe to say,
Okay.
legislator.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So we've also talked a lot about the staffing of the office. What is the optimal number of employees that the office should have in order to function effectively?
I'm not sure that's a hard and fast number to that, but I do think we need people who are qualified to do the compliance, to do the outreach, you know, to make a meaningful mark here. I don't think there's a magic number. I know we have headcount for 7. We have additional funding available from the legislature for additional staffing, which you know, I think we're getting to where we need to be. I mean, you looked at you discussed the variety, you know, the levels of staffing over the years. It seems that we're in the ballpark of what could work. Once we staff up, which we're not
Okay.
right now.
And given that we've just now approved the office for the Asian Americans, and it sounds like the Hispanic, that CASA will be changed to
Office
a
of
different
Hispanic Affairs.
configuration,
Mhm.
right? Has there been thought to how or if all of these agencies are going to be working together? Will there be competing interests? Will there be interests that be working together?
Yeah.
Or, you know, what are the mandates? What are the charters going
Right,
to be?
so the legislature, the bill passed yesterday by the legislature did include certain responsibilities for this new Office of Asian Affairs that overlap with the Office of Minority Affairs. That was the majority's draft and final legislation, which the administration did not have a chance to see before it was passed. We saw earlier versions. We did raise some concerns about overlap of functions. We wanted, when the county executive announced this new office back at her State of the County, we wanted the office to reflect the needs of the Asian American population within Nassau County, and we felt strongly that certain things may need to be done and other things may not need to be done, and that should be developed over time. I'm not criticizing, but the bill that passed yesterday does have certain things that do overlap. So we do need a little time to consider that, the version that was passed yesterday, and come up with the adequate staffing for the office without overlap and duplication that's not helpful. What we do want to do is involve everyone within the county, regardless of their background, and even people who might not fit into one of the 3 offices we've just named, right? We have the Office of Minority Affairs as sort of an overarching group. Then we have the Office of Hispanic Affairs and a new Office of Asian Affairs. We want everyone engaged. So we do want to see collaboration with these departments. I'm very excited about the people who we have working at the heads of these departments. They're extremely collaborative people. I'm thrilled to have them in my vertical, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this works out and staffing each office appropriately over the next few months.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Legislator Bino?
Thank you, Chair. Good day.
Hello.
I'm going to take my questions out of order. I'm going to start where you just left off. I was aggrieved yesterday when I learned that that amendment to the, is somebody's mic on? I'm sorry. Legislator Walker. Thank you. I was aggrieved yesterday when the final amendment to the Asian American Affairs Department was introduced. I attempted to try and get it modified or amended earlier last week, and then again yesterday on the floor, because there is significant overlap to the degree that Section 3 of the Asian American Affairs is identical to Section 3 C and D of the Charter of the Office of Minority Affairs, in so much that it reads that that department will provide access and opportunity for Asian American participation in county contract and procurement programs, and D, that it would develop and improve the county's women and minority affairs, minority business enterprise programs to afford greater opportunities to participate in public contract bidding procedures, as well as exploring ways and means to assure participation. I met with members of the Asian community yesterday, and I explained to them that while in support of a department that would look to provide cultural programming and look to work in a very unique way to deliver services to that community, that I unfortunately had to vote against that bill yesterday, because I don't believe that it would serve this county well to start parsing out roles and work that is assigned to the Office of Minority Affairs. I believe, and listen, I know you guys, there's been a disjointed process because we had to get the council and other things. I do have a great bit of disappointment that we're not further along in this process. But that being said, I'm going to say something that needs to be said. That department has never been resourced to provide any high level of service. It has not been resourced to be able to engage any minority community appropriately so that they could engage in the contracting process. I have been here a very short time. My tenure is pretty short in comparison to some. But I can tell you I had a help from a staffer just immediately, because I knew that back in 2014 or 15, I came in 2015, that with help from the Office of Minority Affairs, I was able to identify some deficits. And we lobbied to ensure that there was additional money put into that department. And so in 2014, their budget allotment was $530,000. But in 2016, we lobbied and we fought to get that budget increased to $576. And it was to support 10 employees, and not part-time employees, but full-time employees. Okay, in 2018, the budget comes in at 462. We were going backwards. And that's when I saw it and said, no, we can't do this. We cannot go backwards. We have to put the money into this budget. So we fought, and we got $90K added back to that budget. I had a letter sent to the county executive's office, and if you're aware of it, you could stop me from searching through my papers. Are you aware of my letter that I had sent to the county executive questioning why the $90,000, although it was memorialized that we had struck an agreement, it wasn't added to that budget? So there was an agreement in October, and there was a letter memorializing that in November, I believe, that went to both the presiding officer and the minority leader, and it CC'd all members of the legislature. But as of March 15, 2019, that money hadn't been restored to the budget, and my last inquiry and request of last week indicated it still wasn't restored. So my question is, when will that money meet the budget?
So, Legislator, I'm not directly involved in that discussion, but my understanding is that there was an agreement, and again, having not been part of it, I'm not the best person to speak to, but that the positions would be filled administratively and reflected in the next budget. But you were actually there. I was actually not there. I don't believe any of my colleagues were involved in that conversation, so I do have to defer to someone else in the administration to answer your question on that. That's all I know.
My question, my letter goes unanswered from March 15th. I would ask that I could finally get an answer to that question. I'd like to know when that money will meet the budget. In addition, we lobbied for $48,000 for CASA.
Yes.
And that money also needs to meet their budget, okay?
Right. Now, in that case, I can speak to, because we're closer to filling CASA headcount. So as we look to fill, it's a much smaller staff, obviously, but as we look to fill a deputy position and an administrative support position in that office, we may need some of those additional funds. So, it's a little easier to speak to that one than to OMA, where we still have vacant headcount.
Okay, so
I'm not saying that's right, but it is just the fact.
We know it's not right.
Yeah, okay,
So
we agree.
let's go back to how I opened regarding the Asian American Affairs Department, which, again, I wrote a letter in support of establishing that entity, but it played out a little differently than we agreed to. But long story short, I'd like to understand what this administration, what's their vision for how the Office of Asian American Affairs will engage with the Office of Minority Affairs. What is the vision?
As I've said before, the version of the bill that ultimately passed has duplication with OMA in a way that we have not had a chance to fully assess. I mean, that's the truth, right? It came out, it passed. We're very enthusiastic about the establishment of the office, but we need to take a little time to reflect on what makes sense administratively. But we are hopeful that offices can work collaboratively together to lift people up. But different communities have different needs. And we want to make sure that each of these offices meets the needs of the communities that they are intended to help. So I'll have to, and Ms. Muswell would like to say something.
Historically, the administration, prior to this administration, has never engaged with the Asian community. We have a 10% increase. The Asian community is now at 10% of the population. We're the fastest growing population in Nassau County, about 40% up from where we were. So this population is here. We are needing of services, and we have our concerns. So they do have a full right to be represented. With that being said, we are hoping—
One second. Let's be clear. I join you, okay, in that. So that's not my question. I'm in support of the Asian American Affairs, because I do think you have a unique situation within this county that allows for that type of representation. But what I do believe is that your role should be in support of Office of Minority Affairs, with them taking the lead, that you're a supporting role actor in this whole—
Absolutely. So the Office of Minority Affairs, whatever forums, whatever programs they set up for MWBE participation, even with right now, whatever they've set up with the Port Authority, my main goal was to make sure that the Asian community knows about the programs, and I try to outreach within my communities or these communities to make sure they attend the forums that OMA sets up. Same way that CASA would try to outreach within the Hispanic community to make sure and ensure that those forums that they're there. And also we sometimes provide language access. So if there was, for instance, I mean, this is not with
Okay.
MWBEs, but census, we were having a census job fair. So, and our roles were to reach out to our different constituencies and even have the flyers and any information translated into Mandarin or in our different languages. So that's how our role would be. It would be a supportive role, not a primary role.
Agreed, and I think the legislation needs to catch up with what your vision is, what my vision is, so that there is clarity, there is no confusion as to how we would be moving forward. I have a question regarding the hindrance. We talked about the hindrance for participation, and so I think, you know, the legislative body unanimously with, you know, the county executive's legislation remove that $125 fee. So I think that's great. I think that's one barrier moved out of the way, but I do think one of the larger barriers is that they face is regarding access to capital, and I do believe it's also being able to effectively and deal with the bond, the performance bond requirements. And so I had proposed a local law. And in fact, the now county executive, previous county legislator, Laura Curran, actually co-signed along with other members of the minority caucus on that piece of legislation. And I would like, you know, under the previous administration, it didn't get any steam. I've been moving this forward to the extent that I think I have one or two lenders in place that are willing to start engaging. I would like to see this administration provide some support to that and really engage with me on this legislation, because I believe that that is more of an issue than a $125 fee.
Okay.
And I think if we're really going to do something that is meaningful in this area, that we move forward in dealing with, you know, a local law that would allow for contracts to really be attained, and then use that contract as leverage to be able to access capital, to be able to do the hiring, the purchasing of material and equipment, and paying for, you know, performance bonds. I think that's the way forward. So I implore this administration to, you know, come together with me and move this forward. I know my bell went off a long time ago, and but I do have a lot more questions, but we have a commitment that we're going to be able to come back here.
Yeah.
Can I leave one other question with the administration? Because they're going to have some work.
I know that Legislator Bino is on a roll. No, sure.
One other
Ask the final question.
One, thank you.
And we will be coming back.
Thank
That
you.
I can assure you.
So, in an effort to make sure that the Office of Minority Affairs and the Office of Asian American Affairs are funded properly, I would like to know how the administration is paying for the Office of Asian Affairs, and I'd like to know if there will be a reconciliation to the budget of the Office of Minority Affairs, since that budget, we have not funded that department, and now that department has been funded out of the Office of Minority Affairs. There needs to be a reconciliation to that budget.
I can tell you there obviously will be a reconciliation. There will have to be a budget plan for both offices, and I'm not prepared to answer today. You just passed it yesterday, but there will be further discussions, obviously, and some decisions made in the next few weeks to months.
Thank you.
Thank you, Legislator.
Thank you, Legislator Bino. In light of the time, and I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to hear from the public, my own time to be able to ask questions, I am severely limiting. Obviously, the goal of the administration is to have a functioning Office of Minority Affairs, I'm assuming, correct?
Correct.
And the Office of Minority Affairs is a priority for the administration, correct?
Correct.
I do note, however, that the Office of Minority Affairs is the only county department that does not have a permanent commissioner, or a permanent executive director, 16 months into the administration.
Correct.
I know that you've indicated that the latest search closed, correct?
Correct.
But I want the assurance of the administration that it is a priority to get a name to the legislature for us to be able to consider, so that there is constancy, continuity, and effective leadership. And this isn't a criticism of any of our acting people, but there is effective leadership at the top, because in order for that department to function, you need to have someone in charge, and the people that work in that department need to know that the person that is in charge is the same person that's going to be in charge tomorrow, and is going to be in charge a week from now, a month from now, and that must happen.
We agree.
The disparity study. Did you indicate that the RFP for the disparity study has not yet gone out?
It was funded, it has not gone out. It was funded in the capital budget, I don't know if you, is it a week ago? We have a draft, as DC.
Well, it was
said.
actually funded in the capital budget in 2016 initially, correct?
I believe there were bonds that
never
was
funded?
never supported.
I don't think it was ever.
I don't
High
believe it ever
clarity.
went.
I'm
through.
sorry,
I don't think the
it
bond
was
ever
not
passed.
funded.
Was not funded, yeah.
It was not funded. It was passed in the capital
Yeah.
plan, but it was
But
not
never
funded.
funded.
It was
Wasn't
only
funded.
funded
Thank you.
through the, a bond ordinance probably about a month ago or 3 weeks ago.
Okay, okay. But there was, I'm assuming, and again, it's not a criticism, well, since a disparity study is clearly essential to perform many of the functions of the Office of Minority Affairs. I think that's been clear, made clear, certainly through the testimony and through the limited questions that legislators have been able to ask. Is there a particular reason why, when the disparity study was included in the 2016 capital plan, why there was no request for funding of that disparity study until my colleagues here on the legislature brought that to everyone's attention?
So this was also the administration was for the disparity study. In any of our meetings with stakeholders, this was the #1 concern for us to advocate to the administration, that we needed a disparity study, and they were on board with it too. This is something that was unanimously approved by everybody, that it was
Yeah,
important.
and I know, again, like, I'm not involved in the budget and the capital budget and all that, but those negotiations were on a separate track, and waiting for the capital budget to be authorized was a collaborative, right, with the legislature.
But again,
So
I mean,
the timing
essentially-
of that, and the fact that there wasn't one done for years before
Oh,
the current
understood.
administration.
Understood, but the point is that we've
It hasn't been
kind
funded
of...
in such a long time that to be, we're moving as quickly as we possibly can, legislator. We have a draft already in less than a month. We're not gonna waste any time. We are gonna move this out and get a vendor who's qualified to do the work. OMA will be involved throughout the process, and there's a lot of work even after the study comes out.
We appreciate that, but the point is that we've in effect wasted about 16 months.
I think the
And we want
county
to,
may
and we
have
want to make
wasted
sure
longer
that
than
this
that,
process moves,
legislator.
that the process moves forward as quickly as possible.
I-
And finally, with respect to staffing, again, we're 16 months into the administration. And the reason that this hearing is happening 16 months into the administration is because, again, we wanted to give the administration the opportunity to get their feet under them, to organize itself, to fully staff up the office, right? And unfortunately, here we are 16 months later, and right now we have a little over half the number of employees that it had, at least for the last year that we had data, and roughly a third of the number of employees that the office had at its height, I believe, back in 2005. I believe you indicated 2008. What is the plan at this point? We're talking about the office being fully staffed, but we don't have an executive director, right? There's no one permanent running the office. There's no staff for the office to be able to perform its functions. What is the plan, and how quickly can we expect to have an office that's full? As a legislature, we're giving you whatever you ask for, and we've done that. When are you going to fully take advantage
Yeah.
of what
Well,
you've been given?
There is a staff legislator. We do things. They have been busy. We presented.
I'm not suggesting that you don't, but you have
but
4
we
people.
presented, I actually want to, don't want to take up too much more time revisiting things that we've already covered, but we do have a staff. Work is getting done. We've had people committed, including, both the former acting executive director and the current one, that are doing their best to keep things moving, to have forums, to do discussions, to interact with the procurement team, to get systems in place, all the things we've discussed today. So the notion that we're not working is unfortunate. And I also like to say that we are very anxious to have an executive director. I still believe, maybe it's my experience outside, that it's best for someone at the head of the office to pick their own team members. If this goes on much longer, we may have to take a different approach, but that has been the approach we've taken, that there'll be an executive director who's permanent, then you'll know what the mix of qualifications are that you need in each of the other positions, so that you have someone, if you have someone at the head who doesn't have the proper MWBE compliance experience, perhaps maybe you need a deputy that has that. So just to sum up, we are continuing along the path we're on. We're pressing the Minority Affairs Council to get us their names as soon as possible. It just closed yesterday, and we're hoping to fill up that position very promptly and then subsequent positions over the next few months.
I'm yielding the balance.
I know there's a
my-
lot of work to do. I'm not saying there's not a lot of work to do on that, but we're very committed to it, legislator, and thank you.
I'm yielding the balance of my very limited time just to Legislator Walker.
There's some issues that we're dealing with now and making sure we get that executive director in place, making sure we do get it fully staffed, doing all that they can do. They've been an established office for a period of time. Look forward to them working together with the new Office of Asian American Affairs. And again, if there is some overlapping in things and someone calls office of the one office rather than another office, and again, it's working together. We should be working together for the benefit of everybody. And, I want to be able to certainly reach out to all my constituents and tell them that, in a way I laugh in Hicksville, we have 3 legislators. And I said, well, I know they have their own districts, but what we do for our community doesn't stop at a line, doesn't stop at a street, doesn't stop at a house. It should involve all of us working together. And hopefully, wherever we might overlap in, that we can help each other, assist each other, and do everything we can to make both of the communities better.
Thank you, Legislator Walker, and Legislator Szilagyi just begged me for 30 seconds, right?
Right, just to piggyback off of a statement that you made, you said that we're going to give you everything that you want. So one thing that we can do in the meantime while this disparity study occurs in the fall of next year is that, for example, the legislature, the majority, could put on the agenda the requirement that every contract over $1 million have an NWB compliance consultant sign off on that. That's one thing that we could do in the meantime to help promote more participation. So thank you.
Thank you, Legislator Szilagyi. All right, we're now going to move to public comment.
Thank you. We should sit.
All right,
Okay.
obviously we have a lot of speakers. We're supposed to be out of here at 6 o'clock.
Everybody has 30 seconds.
Everybody has 30 seconds. Now, we're going to ask you, there's a 3-minute time limit. We're going to ask you to please be limited to that 3-minute time limit. We're also going to ask you, instead of asking questions directly of the administration, because then there's going to be time for answers that's going to burn through everything, we're going to record those questions. And we're going to try and get the administration to answer those questions the next hearing that we have. All right? This way we can get through as many speakers as possible. Please make your points, and please get us the request for information. Don't go away. Please get us the request for information that you, because it's important that you, the whole idea is to listen to the public too, right?
We weren't going to leave. We were going to sit and listen to the
Stay right there.
Okay.
So our first speaker, our first public speaker is Abdul Aziz Bayutan. Mr. Aziz?
Just push that red button. Perfect.
Good afternoon, Chair. I thought I purposely gave my sleep almost at the end. I thought maybe I'll listen to everybody else and just react to it. But anyway, my name is Abdul Aziz Buyan. I am the president of Muslim community in Nassau County, and also the chairman of Board of Trustees of Hillside Islamic Center, and of course a proud member of current Asian American Advisory Board. It's a lot of learning. It's the first time I'm here, and I'm learning so much, and I know so much to learn. One thing I just want to make sure I was listening about some overlapping and all this thing. You know, as an immigrant brown man, and that thought of a minority is never lost in me. I know those brothers and sisters who have really paved the ways for us, and every second of our life, we appreciate that. So that whenever we have this thing, if I'm willing to, if I'm also selected for the Asian American Advisory Board, I would suggest that, you know, we do not, I would advise to the executive director, most likely would be Farah Mazawala. She is the current director, and we hope her to be there, but she's doing an excellent job with the board, the advisory board right now, that we do not compete. We would be competing we are complementing to each other. Minority affairs, they are brothers and sisters, and the Asian affairs, at the end of the day, we are all minorities. So we will be, instead of competing with each other, we would be complementing each other. And that's the spirit that I'm sure all the Asian affairs board members will have, and I'm sure the county will definitely would accommodate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kathy Williams? Good evening, Ms. Williams.
Good evening. I'm here to refute any ideas that the Honorable Regina Williams is lacking in leadership ability. I'm speaking on behalf of the Honorable Dr. Regina Williams. I have known her for over 37 years. I have found her, even in her youth, to be a woman of honor and integrity, with visions and a reality of making things work. She is intelligent, full of wisdom, and exhibits strong, very strong leadership in whatever she undertakes. She has been employed by the Bureau of Investigating Bankruptcy, and she has done a very fine job in that area in leadership abilities and training employees and conducting a very large staff. She has served in many capacities in the community, and she still is very active in the community. She has established a Millennium Club for 18 to 35-year-old young people. She also has been a very valuable member of the Uniondale Commerce Department. I believe that it would be very unfortunate to overlook Dr. Regina in any way. She is a rare person and would be an asset to any department that she's in. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Margot Cargill? Good evening, Ms. Cargill.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm well.
For everyone who doesn't know me, I am President Emeritus of the Uniondale Chamber of Commerce. I'm also on the Board of Directors for the Nassau Council of Chambers of Commerce. I'm also the U.S. Small Business Administration's New York District Minority Business Champion. I'm also the federal Ronald H. Brown Award recipient for leadership and advocacy for the minority business community. And really, all of this being said, you know, DBE certified, MBE certified, WBE certified, you know, all the W's and S's and B's, all of this in order to bring my business and my family forward. I would really love at this time to obviously tell all of you how important leadership is. All of these conversations that we're having right now, they start and end with the selection of firm leadership and direction. And so I know this is a delicate situation, and you know, all of us really need to grasp the concept of moving forward together, united, and the first step is obviously selecting a leader. and sticking with it and then delivering and supporting that individual. So I do support Dr. Regina Williams in that capacity. And wherever she needs support, that's our job. As community members, as leaders, the legislators, the administration, we're really supposed to get behind her and support her in the direction that we want to take this department, because obviously it's been long neglected and disjointed. And a lot of the conversation that I'm hearing, I had a planned comment, but I realized that I need more information, because a lot of what, Legislator Bino and Legislator Szilagyi and Rhodes, et cetera, you have valid concerns, as do we. But we really need to think about what the immediacy of the decisions we need to make, and that's in leadership. And that's it. I also would like to thank, though, the Nassau County Legislature, as well as, Laura Curran, County Executive Laura Curran, the Comptroller Jack Shearman. Really, they've tried and succeeded in pushing a lot of these initiatives forward and taking these little steps that we should not take lightly, because it is progress. And Robert, your department has been outstanding in rectifying some of these technical issues that we really should not be having at this time. There should be a disparity study already in place and generated. So that's about it.
Thank you, Ms. Carter.
Thank you.
William Watson? And I believe that's Bishop Watson, right? Good evening.
Good evening to the chairman, Mr. Rhodes, and to the Standing Committee of Minority Affairs. I'm William Watson. Thank you for this opportunity to address this body. I come today with concerns of our community being underrepresented based on immediate needs. January of 2018, we started a new administration in the county. At that time, I served as chairman of the Minority Affairs Council. The new administration and I met to discuss the future of the Minority Affairs Office, but this meeting turned out to be non-productive based on county's intent not to do the right thing for the Office of Minority Affairs. July of the same year, the Minority Affairs Council had an election, which we elected a new chairperson. The assignment of the new chairperson and the council was to recommend a person to the county executive. After a short process, the committee received several resumes, interviewed them, several persons. They disqualified those persons that were interviewed, with the exception of one, whom they did not interview, but the same process was illegal. Fortunately for us, the person that was denied the county by the county legislatures, to add insult to injury, the process was circumvented, and the real process of the county executive chose the person. They did not recommend to the county executive. She recommended the person to the council and sent that person forward to the legislature without the council being totally in compliance. The sad part about this whole day is that we spent almost 2 hours here, and the hypocrisy of this county legislator and this manipulative team that have come to every meeting we had and manipulated the process just so that she could have her way. She did not intend to have an executive director in place. It was never the intent, because everything that we've done, we have in this room several members of the community, former staff members. We worked together over the years for this office, and the resumes that were submitted, which were required by the new administration, were never even considered. These were people that were in office. One of the things you should look at before you have a transition is not transition people out of office until you get somebody in the office. And the sad part about this administration is they've ignored every attempt to fix this problem. And the sad part about this is that these people are manipulative, they have actually dishonored everything, and they've actually broken the law. And the thing I'm asking this legislative body to do is respect the law. If anything, we have laws, we have rules, so we ought to live by them.
Thank you, Bishop. Habib Ahmed. Good evening, Mr. Ahmed.
Good evening. Habib Ahmed, President of Islamic Center of Long Island in Westbury. And, you know, after listening to these last 2 hours, I see that this procurement of contracts is becoming an issue here. The Minority Affairs, the newly created Department of Minority Affairs, the CASA, and Asian Affairs, which the newly created Asian Affairs, the present Minority Affairs, and the members of CASA. These are all minority people, practically every one of them of minority. We should be sharing information with each other, and there should be competition in getting these contracts, and the people from Asian Affairs should be getting contracts, people from Minority Affairs should be getting contracts from the county, and people from CASA should be getting the contract from the county. It's very important that we all get together and make sure that it is good for the county also, not just to give contracts to individuals without realizing what is good for the county, because after all, we are citizens of the county also. So it's very important. And I do think Farham Mozawala will make a wonderful executive director for Asian Affairs Department. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. Fahad Rajput. How are you, Mr. Rajput?
How are you? Thank you for having me. Just want to make a very quick point, and I'm going to keep it a little bit short, but I think all of it, and Mr. Habib actually commented on it very well. He said that all of us are minorities, but more importantly, all of us are Americans. So I agree that, we should be, we might look out for interests, but we should collaborate more with each other rather than compete against each other. I think Legislator Walker also mentioned it, that instead of having just one point of contact, whether it's Minority Affairs, someone go to another, the Asian Affairs Committee, and they can also achieve contracts through there or through Minority Affairs. So I think it's more of a, it complements rather than competes with each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rajput. Ather Tirmizi.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. I'm just a average resident of Nassau County. I just want to start with, I think a lot of good comments have been made by a lot of everybody from the legislator, from the county, and from the audience. What I want to focus on is that often when I'm sitting in these kind of meetings, and including today's, I felt that there was a perception of us versus them, which I think is the wrong path for us to go on. Because this us versus them environment that we have seen in the last couple of years, taking flames from shooting in churches in South Carolina to shootings in synagogues in Pittsburgh to shooting in mosques. And then just this Easter Sunday, there was a bomb blast in churches in Sri Lanka. So I would implore everybody in the audience and our legislator and our the county people that we must ensure that when are we having these dialogues, the dialogues must accompany by the tone of tolerance and coming together. And whether it's Asian Americans, whether it's African Americans, it's Hispanic Americans, or any kind of other Americans, I think at the end of the day we are Americans, and the tone of tolerance and the tone of working together would, I think, benefit us all more than probably creating this environment and have a conversation where it's versus them. I think the issues are real for the funding and procurement, but the tone of us versus them probably is not the best to handle these situations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tirmizi. I'm sure that's a sentiment with which we all agree. Legislator Bynot wishes to be heard.
Thank you. I think it's at this point that I need to be very clear in my communications, because apparently there was some selective hearing when I spoke earlier. I was very clear to say that I support the Office of Asian Affairs because I believe that they too are allowed to have representation. What I believe would not be beneficial to this county as a whole would be to take a department that was charged with having compliance over procurement contracts for minority and women business enterprises to take it and parse it out. I believe it should be a centralized function so that it's standardized and uniformed. If we parse it out and different departments are dealing with it differently, we will not yield the benefit to which I think every minority community member that is represented in this county is entitled to. For too long, this department has not functioned. It has been dysfunctional because it was set up to fail by not having the proper resources. I think this process has to be standardized, uniformed, and it needs to be centralized out of one department, with the other departments assisting them in its ability to be able to engage every community throughout Nassau County. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Legislator Bino. Luis Mendez? Good evening, Mr. Mendez.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, and legislators who are still here. I want to thank you for this time. I want to second what Legislator Silabino said. This is not your committee, but this is your people, so I commend you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to just state a little bit of history. Back in 1990, the African American community, through many of the leaders that are here tonight, decided to file a lawsuit against the Nassau County Board of Supervisors for discriminating practices, violating one man, one vote, or one person, one vote. Eventually, the African American community, along with some of the Latinos at the time, were able to be victorious and created disseminated the Board of Supervisors, created the 19-member legislature, the county executive, and the councilmatics districts 1 and 2. So to my Asian brothers and sisters, my name is Luis Mendez. I am the co-founder of America's Islamic Radio, the first radio station in the U.S. that deals with Americans who are come from the faith of Islam. So I want to say salam alaikum to you and welcome to the world of politics and government. And I've been fighting on your behalf since 2001, including helping a fellow Muslim ran for office as a county legislator who almost won in Legislator Szilagyi's district. So let me say this to you. The Office of Minority Affairs is the only office of its kind out of 3,007 counties in the U.S. The charter mandates of the Office of Minority Affairs are broad. The Office of Hispanic Affairs in Nassau County has no charter mandates. If you look at the charter, it says, and there should be a coordinating agency for Spanish Americans, and that's it. If you look at the Office of Minority Affairs, it's had broad mandates. So I'm hoping that we continue to empower the agency that was created specifically to empower all minorities. The questions that I have for the administration are many, but I would recommend to this body to either subpoena or call by way of a letter all the members of the Minority Affairs Council, including the secretary, the chairman, and the vice chairman, to make sure that all these allegations of circumvention get brought out into the light. You will find there that even some legislators had concerns and wrote letters to the county executive outlining those concerns at the beginning of the year when the county executive appointed one person, not knowing or realizing that she shouldn't have done that because she needed to consult the county council. I want to ask all of you these questions. Who is managing Title VII? It doesn't matter that it took 16 months to get your feet wet and get yourself going, but that needs to be done every day. Nassau County is a $2.5 billion entity. 38% of the population needs to manage $650 million worth of opportunities. Who is managing that on a daily basis? Certification. They made a big deal about certification. There are thousands of certified entities known as the Empire State Development. I was one of the members of the last disparity study. The radius that is going to be used is 50 miles. There's plenty of minority firms already certified within those 50 miles. We should be hitting every single mandate every time a mandate comes through from the state funding contracts that we get, and we're not doing that. So what I'm saying to you is, you all talked about MWB certification as if it was a big deal that we need to now take on. It is a small portion of the process. And we already have 16 or 17 agencies throughout the state of New York doing that already. We have certified entities. Let's just get with the business and get them working. People of color, Asian, Latinos, and African Americans need those opportunities to be county born and county raised. And the last thing I will say to this body of the legislature, thank you for hosting this hearing. The legislator Szilagyi said something that was key. If you attach a consultant, an MWBE consultant, to every single county contract that's over $1 million and you mandate that, watch certification and watch compliance go up, because somebody will be watching on your behalf and on behalf of the people of color of the County of Nassau. Thank you so
Mr.
much.
Mendez.
God bless Nassau County.
Did you, you referenced, Mr. Mendez, you referenced a list of questions that you had?
I will submit that in writing to you.
Absolutely.
And I will make sure that we follow up on the next hearing that you will be hosting.
I appreciate
And please
that.
let us know the date so that we can bring more people out.
What I've asked at this point is for the legislators to provide me a list of their available dates within the next 2 weeks so that we can get this scheduled, subject to the availability of the chamber.
Thank you so much. And by the way, I was glad to see my county legislator Ferretti here today. I was happy. And the members of Empowering Young Professionals, young Muslims, Latinos, and African Americans working right across the street from you, making sure that we voice our opinions about holding government accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Mita Meriday. Good evening, Ms. Meriday.
Good evening. Funny, I was just here yesterday. Oh, didn't see all of this diversity in the room yesterday, but we'll work with what we got. Mita J. Meriday, Baldwin resident. This hearing has been very interesting, just in terms of the statements from the administration that, from my mind, it just troubles me that we have people who are in such high-level important positions who lack the information about this particular demographic. That speaks volumes to me. First of all, let's look at the numbers. My Hofstra-generated MBA, but there's no point bringing qualifications to this table because it doesn't seem to be the hiring factor for the administration. There are over 44,000, please share this information with Legislator Ferretti, and this is all from the U.S. Census 2012. 44,000 self-certified minority businesses in Nassau County. So the pool that we use, that we say, oh, we've got such a great number when you have less than 200, that's not a great pool, okay? It's more like, well, maybe one of the potholes that we have in Nassau County, but those are becoming craters. There are 11,700 veteran firms in Nassau County. Long Island has the largest veteran population in New York State. As I brought up yesterday, I proposed legislation that was drafted initially in 2014, that was enacted in 2016, and now that we sit in 2019, we still don't have any program, office, agency, commission, department, or corner store for service, disabled, or veteran-owned business development. Black women are the leading recruits in the military. They're also the leading business development startups, but they get the least resources in the military and have the least in sales receipts in businesses. So, though most of you are aware that I do advocate on a daily basis for the struggles of our veterans, clearly I'm going to speak on the needs of black women in America. Women-owned businesses, 48,000 in Nassau County. So let's just break down this 11% of contract participation. If you remove the white women from the minority and women business enterprise piece, I guarantee you that that figure will be less than 2%. Because remember, I'm here at the meetings. I ask the questions. And even though the administration can say, oh, we have all of these regulations and we submit information, I'm the one who asks the question, do you just hand the package to the Minority Affairs? Do they provide recommendations? Do they provide companies? The answer is usually no. So we need a lot of training on all sides. The legislators need to become more aware of the demographics because, as I say, here in the county, as well as the town, we cannot win a lawsuit. And trust me, if there was a class action lawsuit that was brought up as it pertained to business, you couldn't bond enough to pay the reparations with regard to that. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. We need much more than hearings. We need everybody in the room. And this time, let's get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Meriday. Stacy Rose? Stacy Rose? How are you, Ms. Rose?
Thank you. I'm doing very well.
I will just, before you start, and I apologize for interrupting. At this point in time, we're going to cut off the submission of any additional speaker forms. There is going to be a subsequent hearing, only because we want to make sure we're already 20 minutes over. I want to make sure that we run through the speakers that we have that already submitted slips. So at this point, no more slips, if that's okay. Thanks. Ms. Rose.
I think I have to be in favor of Dr. Regina Williams, and I hope that makes people here happy. I'd just like to make a few comments. I'm a small business owner. I've been certified here. I've never gotten any business from Nassau County, although I received business from New York City, state certified, city certified, county certified. I was able to be paid using a P card, which was a credit card given to various departments to do business with me. That's just an aside. I'm not here to speak about my business, a group, but what I want to say is Black Americans, American blacks, American descendants of slavery are a unique people wholly formed in the USA, but out of whose struggle these minority programs were created. Affirmative action has not benefited Black people the way that it should. We've opened doors for others while we remain on the bottom. I have the data, I have the charts. All of you should have that information. We've got to do something to lift Black people. I'm a lifetime resident of Nassau County. I've experienced every form of discrimination, from work to housing discrimination, to having a brother and sister in Steel Street School in Baldwin Harbor being the only Black family there. Had we known then what we know now, things would have been different. I don't want this going on anymore. So I've never seen the Office of Minority Affairs come out with goals for, and I really want to separate the word minority and Black, because I don't see Black people getting business. We have been left out from time immemorial. And I'd like to see us included. And that's really my take on things here. And I hope Nassau County will get its act together, because I'm ready to leave New York after my family being here over 250 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug Mayers? Mr. Mayers? Mr. Mayers yields his time to Nita Meriday.
Yes, I'm back. And what I wanted to say, as it pertains to, and definitely speaking for, my brother and mentor back there, let's talk about the certification process. And as my sister in the struggle, Stacy, said, Nassau County does not certify. Let's get that straight. You register them for your program. You don't certify. And if we're throwing titles around, I was the vice president of the New York, New Jersey Minority Purchasing Council during those lean years, 9/11. I'm a 9/11 first responder and all of that. So when we talk about New York City and the certification process, I was a part of that team in between helping to get diversity on the AirTrain project, the Terminal 1 project at JFK, and now working with the Port Authority and JetBlue with regard to Terminal 6 and Terminal 7. You might want to take a few clues from the Port Authority as far as how they do outreach initially for MWBE participation. We developed a memorandum of understanding with New York City that would minimize the amount of certifications that MBEs. I'm not talking about MWBEs. I'm talking about minority businesses, minority male, minority female businesses, to minimize the processes so that their certification through the NMSDC affiliated organization would carry through so that they would be able to participate in contracts for the major projects in New York City. Again, we have a almost $1 billion budget in Nassau County, and on average, there's less than 2% of contract opportunities for diverse businesses. And I'm talking about everybody. Because for those of you who know me, I speak for everybody. So we need to do something differently. We need to do it differently, and we need to be about the business. These residents, these constituents have been here all day, and like I said, this is my second time here this week. I was here yesterday, and I brought up the point 2 weeks ago as Legislator Carrie Szilagyi was. I brought up the issue about the procurement problem with the legislation, and I'm all for everybody, okay? You trace my history. I'm scared to go through Ancestry.com because I know I'm touching on everybody, just like all of us mostly here. But let's keep it real. If you got $600 million in contracting, we were the ones, and I was here for those that don't know the history. I was here, like Luis Mendez can attest to it. I was here to fight to get that diversity study in 2003. The majority was not interested in a disparity study, which is why it was not funded. I'm just sorry that Minority Leader Kevon Abrahams is not here because he spoke to that issue and he got shot down. And as all you know, I sit in the same spot over there, so I spoke to that. So let's not keep going back around. I wasn't here when it happened. Fix it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Meriday. Joe Santangelo? How are you, Mr. Santangelo?
Good evening. Thank you.
Good evening.
My name is Joe Santangelo. I'm a resident of Nassau County. I came to speak about today for a minute about Dr. Regina Williams. What it is I'm a retired lieutenant from New York Police Department. And when I retired, I was actually a supervisor in a community police unit in the Bedford-Stuyvesant area of Brooklyn. And throughout that time, I realized how when the government works and partners with community organizations in the underserved area, it can really make a difference to help people get connected to the services and the benefits that they're entitled to get, that they would not normally always get. So I was looking for something to do with my time, so I wound up in the food pantry that Dr. Williams was running. And when I was there for a while, I saw how efficiently everything was run and how professional everything that she did there was. And I had spoken to her, you know, curious what her background was. And then when I heard that she was a supervisor in the federal bankruptcy court, both in Brooklyn and Long Island for a few decades, it made me understand where she got the training in leadership and, you know, and being professional and thorough with everything. I know her to be absolutely driven, 100% driven to help people in the community and try to take care of everybody in the community and all around in Roosevelt, in Uniondale, and all the people around in that area. Every program that she tries to put in effect, she goes about a thorough, meticulous manner to make it efficiently run and to serve the most amount of people with the limited resources that she has. When she did the food pantry, we saw that the people in the community, they let know that they would also like to have clothes if there was clothes available. So what she did was organize a clothing drive to get clothing available, so when the people came to get food, they could also get clothing. And we put racks up with hangers and let the people, so there was no stigma involved in just like getting all clothes. She made it feel where they were actually like they were going shopping. They could look through the racks and try on the clothes and pick whatever they liked for them. And she said it was important that the people had dignity about them when they were going at, even that they were getting, you know, handouts from people. Other programs that she did, she institutes a car seat giveaway for the child safety seats for cars. But in order to, like I say, always go about it professional and thorough, she didn't just hand them out willy-nilly to people. She made the people sign up where they had to take a very short instruction class, because she said those car seats, when they're not used the right way, can injure children in the car. So she wanted to make sure that the people that got those seats actually learned how to use them the proper way. So people would come to the building, they got trained in how to use them, and then they went away that day with a car seat. She saw that there was people in the community that were having trouble getting jobs, and maybe they don't have skills that's necessary in the office. So what she did was get a bunch of computers and make a computer lab in the building there and teach people for free in the neighborhood where they can come and learn computer skills, where they learn Microsoft Office and Microsoft Word. And it wasn't just anybody giving them some printed handout from the internet. She had a Microsoft certified trainer that came in and actually gave, through their experience and their knowledge, gave people the skills and the confidence to be what's the word, competent in Microsoft Office. So when they would go and do a job application, they would have the confidence that they knew and they had that skill. She also put a mentoring program in effect. I'll make it quick, for teenagers. And she saw that young boys, particularly in the neighborhood, had some issues. So they went and they taught them how to find jobs and how to look for city and county job applications, try to connect young people in the neighborhood with good government jobs, teach them how to fill out applications for colleges, teach them how to go and the job interview, how to dress for success, and how to deal even with young ladies. So sometimes you see boys, they have problems with girls, they don't know how to interact with them, and they taught them how to be appropriate and respectful with young ladies so they don't have a problem. An important one was how to deal with the police when they get stopped in the street.
Mr. Santangelo, please wrap it up.
Making it quick, yes. I just wanted to say, I wanted to thank Laura Curran, the county executive, for giving Dr. Williams the opportunity and the shot to be in that position there. And really, she's 100% driven, as I said, to serve the community. And if you know her, you would be impressed with her outlook and her desire to just do everything she can for everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Santangelo. Shelley Brasley? Ms. Brasley?
Good evening. I am a little bit concerned about the way it seems we're putting different communities within Nassau County in silos. I'm concerned with the need for an Asian American office. I'm concerned with the need for CASA. And then every time someone said minority affairs tonight, it just cringed me. I hate that word, and I think that you should consider the Office of Diversity and Inclusion or something more inclusive other than minority affairs. But in light of what is happening and what we're talking about, we talked about waiting for this disparity study. You can do project-specific goals to include companies of color in your contracting. There is a formula, and you currently use it for DBE goals. So if you come up with project-specific goals for DBE projects, which are federal, certainly you can come up with project-specific goals for minority affairs and for those contracts to be filled. You don't have to wait for a disparity study. As a matter of fact, it is more legally defensible than your disparity study because you're doing it project by project. We need to come up with solutions that can remedy what's going on in this county immediately, and waiting a year for a disparity study and 6 months for you to figure out how to put out an RFP is not addressing those issues. I also want to bring to your attention the Sobley report, which is the State of Black Long Island, as well as your own comptroller's report addressing the disparities in the Black community. If you're going to have an agency to address disparities in the other communities, in addition to minority affairs, you need an agency to address the issues that plague the African American community in Nassau County. So we need you all to just be inclusive and honest about what's going on in this county. We all play a role in the deficiencies that plague us, and we must all take responsibilities for those roles. I am in favor of us being fair and inclusive to all of the residents that have sacrificed to live in this place called Nassau County. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Presley. Charlene Thompson?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to speak this evening and
Ms.
having
Thompson.
this hearing. I just want to share a couple of things with you based upon my personal experience, but I want to state a well-known fact, or maybe it's not so well-known, that Nassau County remains one of the most segregated counties in the United States. And although overall we're seen as a wealthy county, but our black and brown folks are concentrated in what we call majority minority communities. Now, I grew up in Nassau County in Roosevelt and graduated from Uniondale High School, went off to college and law school, and decided to return and invest my education and talents right here. So in 2011, I founded my own firm, Thompson Economic Development Services, specifically to address economic revitalization issues throughout Nassau County and in my home areas where I was raised. In 2012, under Governor Cuomo's initiative, I became a dually certified MNWBE and started my efforts to get contracts. This was in the Sandy era. So all these billions of dollars were rolling down. So I knew I had deep roots in the community and had worked in county government since 2002. So I had lots of connections. So I put together these amazingly diverse teams with deep roots from across the United States and even people who had done work with our DPW here in Nassau County. But guess what? There was no access to opportunities for people like me. I couldn't even get a response to who won the bids on the Sandy projects. I had to foil to get an answer to who won the bids. And when I asked for a debriefing as to why we didn't win, I was told, well, we worked with these guys before, so we went with what we knew. That's not about access to opportunities, and that's what we're talking about today. I also want to share that I then became a subcontractor with New York State and with a firm called Dennison and Associates, a DC-based firm, doing training, HUD certified training, and then and MWBE certification training and Section 3 compliance training, and did so well with them across New York State, they invited me to go on the road with them around the nation, but I couldn't get a job in my own backyard. I was fortunate enough to work with Hofstra University in their Minority and Women-Owned Business Certification Program and in Suffolk Community College's Entrepreneurship Assistance Program, where I trained businesses to get certified. But guess what? There's not access to opportunities for us here. And the Office of Minority Affairs' role is to ensure accountability and ensure access. And it's vital that we play that role. Now, my other personal experience is that we have gatekeepers in our community, and that there are groups among us who don't have our best interests at heart. Not unless they get paid and their friends get paid and their nephews or they get their own jobs to line their own pockets to our detriment. And the process has been hijacked by these entities in our community. We deserve better. I'll be back. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Phil Andrews. One more. Good evening, Mr. Andrews.
Good evening. Thank you for this great panel. It was a lot of things that was good here today that was said, and I think there remains some gap. I've been hearing this story since my early 20s. My mentor was Bob Adams' Economic Forum Minority Business paper, and this all evolved from Parent Mitchell when he sued the federal government to get the money to the lobby to have access to minorities. Because if we pay into the taxes and we have businesses, we should be able to share into that. I think it was some good things said today about staffing levels, access to capital, and the chamber that we have is a very unique chamber. It was founded in 2010, and one of the things that we thought when they founded the chamber was to work with the existing entities in the community. We have to work with the government. We have to work with the legislator. I've served 2 terms on the Minority Business, the Comptroller's Committee, and we came up with some good ideas about when the prime has a contract could it legally be a document that he has to sign before he could agree that he'll have minorities working on that contract. So we've looked at a lot of things over the years, and I think it's solid because if you get him to sign, that means he already knew up front that there got to be some minorities on the other end of the contract. And what we're going to do is we're going to continually to work with the government, work with the entities. There were some very good points here today, and that's one of the things that we believe in: advocacy, access to capital, entrepreneurial training. And under Charlene Thompson's leadership as our former chair, MWBE, we did the first regional chamber leadership conference where we had Muslims, we had Dominicans. So we work with different ethnic groups because a lot of times some companies are so small they're going to need to work together to do large-scale projects. And I just wanted to say recently our chamber has been awarded the Small Business Champion for all of downstate New York in 14 counties. And we want to continue to use this leverage to move in the right direction with the legislator need to do around this minority business office. But I think we're making some progress because many years ago we were not even at the table having the conversation at the legislature. So let's keep up the work, and we're going to keep on advocating on behalf of the community too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. Jack Prophet.
Thanks for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I've been hearing a lot about the Office of Minority Affairs, and I'm impressed that everybody knows Minority Affairs. And I want to tell you about the guy who created it, and it seems like nobody knows. I've seen a lot of people today talk about the wonderful thing. I lied. That's correct. Now, my responsibility in that structure, Mr. Kier said, listen, I need to find out how much money we do with things. I said, okay, I'll do that. So he gave me a room and on Jackson Street at the EOC's office where I came in, I studied 10 years of budgets. I went line by line in every budget. And one day, Mr. Legislative Slodge, I came to you, and I showed you it was like $15 billion of contracts and grants, correct? So, and then you asked for, is this valid? And you went it, and you sent your request to the Office of Management Budget Review. And it came back and said it's true. 15. I get nervous sometimes. I want to talk to my people.
Just our reporter is taking down everything that you say, so unless you say it in the microphone, he can't hear you.
Okay, so now I'll talk to you. I even spoke to you about that money that comes in. There's a 15% administrative cost. Is that true? Did we speak about that? Did I speak to you about that?
I don't recall that conversation, but
of all the money that comes into the state from the state and the federal government, 15% of it have an administrative cost. So if it's $600 million, you do the math. It's more than you can buy something to eat with. I can tell you that. And that's a fact. But the problem is there's no conversation on with people who really understand what to do, how to do it, and who they're doing it for. I don't want to talk no more. I've been talking to you for 30 years. If you don't know by now, you'll never, never know.
Thank you, Mr. Prophet. That concludes the list of speakers that we have. I want to thank, first off, I also want to let the public know that we're going to be putting the committee in recess. We will be having a follow-up date for a hearing. I'm going to keep the record open so that if anyone is unable to make the rescheduled hearing but wants to submit comments or questions, they can submit those through the clerk of the legislature. I want to thank our administration panelists. I want to thank members of the public, and we appreciate your input very much. I want to thank my colleagues here on the legislature, and I will put the